just heard of a tremendous fire chat, and I think that will take away from us certain points which we would have otherwise discussed and now we would not. And also, I came up even before I was expected to come up here because I have to go for another session, so I thought, let me save time, quickly occupy a chair. Maybe I will save more time for myself because I think I need to have some lunch and push off for the next event. Today that we are sitting here together, we've got a worry and we've got concern. Now, why are we worried? We are worried because we should have done something that we haven't. And we've got a concern that we still need to do something, but whether we are having enough coordination, enough policy framework, enough understanding of what we are going to face, is that makes our concern deeper. And therefore, without having a background of any discussion, because I think the previous session set it up well, I will straight away go to General Rakesh Kapoor for 5 minutes. Tell me if India has to fight a war today, or in 2030, or 2035. I'm not even talking about long-term plans or whatever. I'm talking about today, tomorrow, and day after tomorrow. That is, today is 2025, and then 2030 and 2035. How do you think India is preparing for this kind of a warfare, and what you need today to fight a war that we win? So let's talk about in 5 minutes, and then we will talk about our preparation.
Firstly, sir, thank you very much for having me on your panel, and thank you very much to this team of Kalam and Kavach. Before we talk about how India is going to fight in the coming competition, coming conflicts, I just want to dwell a little on what is the age that we live in. How is our daily lives orchestrated? We are living in an age of quadruple I. The first I stands for industrial capacities, and both Ambassador Saran and Jen Shukla talked about manufacturing, and so those are industrial capacities. The second I is we've transitioned from the industrial age into the info age, and we are slowly on the cusp of this intelligentization age. So there is a huge amount of data supremacy, and this is the kind of thing that we are living in. And the fourth I is innovation. Innovation was always intrinsic to mankind. So this is the quadruple I synthesis that we live in. And what is central to all this? The centrality to all this is technology. And since you talked about what is the practitioner's view of it, technology and warfare had a symbiotic relationship earlier. That relationship has transitioned to a conjugal relationship. It is no more symbiotic, it's conjugal. And how does it affect and impact warfare? Firstly, the new domains of warfare have opened up, like we just spoke about: cyber, space, cognitive, all those domains of warfare opened up. But another segment of warfare which has become very dominant is the non-contact, non-kinetic capacities. It's no more all about contact kinetic. It is also non-contact, non-kinetic. And this is where there is a huge partnership at play with the non-uniform community also. And the other thing that is really, when you look at technology and when we have to fight, there is a requirement of increased lethality. There's an requirement of increased agility. There's a requirement of increased survivability. And how does this manifest in the operational domain? Firstly, Jan Shukla just talked about persistent surveillance. Yes, persistent surveillance is most required. You need strong intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. How does it secondly manifest? You need precision targeting. You need robust supply chains. You need, probably this is the age of autonomous weapon systems coming up. The requirement is of secure networks. The requirement is of even in the human dimension, the requirement is of enhanced human endurance. So if this is the requirement that we are in, and I'm sure you're going to ask me, so what are you doing about it? So what are we doing about it? As the Indian Army is concerned, we are putting a push towards technology. We are putting a push towards transformation. And we are doing it over 4 pillars. The first pillar is the sheer acquisition of technology. The second pillar is, if this is the technology that we have, there has to be a doctrinal reconstruct. You can't be fighting the same battle. And if this is the doctrinal reconstruct, what are we doing about our structural reconstruct? The structures are changing. And the fourth pillar is, how are we adapting the human resource, that is our troops, how are they changing towards these constructs? And I'll just quickly summarize this whole thing into. So the way we look at it is, technology is actually a key driver to what we are doing. We also understand that the sheer concept of deterrence has changed, and technology itself is a deterrence. But I'll go do a quick reality check while we take this forward. This is the first time in the history of independent India we have a superpower rising in our neighborhood. Last time when superpowers were rising and competing, it was a good 4,000 miles or 3,000 miles away from our shores. This is the first time this is happening. So we are cognizant about it. We are working towards it. We understand the geostrategic construct of the collusivity angle, how our neighborhood is changing. And let me assure you, the changes are happening. I'm sure we all can be put to scrutiny and audit, but I can give you an assurance those changes are taking place. Yes, the year of reform announced by the Ministry of Defense is a huge opportunity to make some big structural changes at the strat level. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. You spoke about the technology is the future driver of warfare, and in that you're talking about the non-kinetic and non-contact. But the wars which have been going on now, of course, some are seen, some are unseen, in the sense that we know a lot which is happening, and in fact the casualties are there, the body bags are going home, so there is a contact war and there is a kinetic war. So how are we looking at this change in the horizon? Are we talking about today we've already gone into a contact less warfare or a kinetic less warfare, when I'm not talking it non, but there are body bags going home, and I think that is causing a huge amount of deterrence to fight a war. If the body bags stop going home, maybe the sense of the deterrence will go towards economy, it will go towards something completely different. Maybe the soldiers at the front line will be less a target, but population in the hinterland would suffer more. So therefore, you talk about the space, you talk about the cyber. Are we saying that tomorrow we will not have a typical air campaign, then the kinetic shaping of battle, and then ultimately the soldiers fighting a battle on the front line, either defending or attacking and going inside and capturing territories, and that causes deterrence and the preparation for it? Is that what we are talking about, or we are already there today? So therefore I had asked you today, tomorrow, and day after tomorrow, because industry needs to be prepared for our today, tomorrow, and day after tomorrow. How do you think the industry should prepare for it? And are DPSUs and PSUs competent to deliver what we expect to unfold right in front of us?
So, sir, I'd like to clarify one thing straight away. That, I was just giving you an overview of the matrix of how competition and conflict is going to take place. But I would like to very, very clearly state all 5 generations of warfare will simultaneously exist. There is going to be the contact kinetic, there will be the non-contact non-kinetic, There may be also the non-contact kinetic, and there may be contact non-kinetic, and the fifth one may be irregular. It will be happening simultaneously, and we see it every day what is happening. So, as far as what is it that we want to articulate to the industry and to anybody who's this thing. Firstly, we've already articulated it in open statements as part of the technology, the TPCR, Technology Perspective Capability Roadmap. So, the industry has to be prepared to charter us through all these 5 generations of warfare. And along with this, if there's something that the industry needs to know is, nobody's inventory can change overnight. It is not feasible. Yes, we require drones. Yes, we require space capacities. Yes, we require cyber capacity. But we have this huge inventory which is there, which is existing with us. We have to integrate that inventory along with this. And that inventory has to be, augmented with certain capacities that they can form part of this large ecosystem of the new paradigm of conflict.
Okay, Professor Ojha, you are from CAPS and you must be looking at how the warfare is changing, because earlier times or even today, we look at the air campaign to start the battle. And now we have come up with the aerospace doctrine, and it was in the body quoted, or the CDS also made a statement that we need 52 satellites. How does the CAPS understand the change of aerial warfare from how traditionally we had an air campaign, how we're going to have drone campaigns, and how the aerospace is going to connect? Are you going to be the leaders of the warfare, or are you going to be the supporters of the warfare? How does CAPS look at it?
So, thank you so much.
Done right.
Okay.
Just done it again.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you so much, and apologies for this small technical. I'm a technical guy, but not a technical guy. Sometimes technology fails. So a very valid question from the moderator. I would like to present in 2 ways the thing. One is in the capacity of CAPS. Definitely I can throw some light, but in a holistic way, because I had been associated with the Trial Services Defense Forces for a long time. I just want to tell you one of the things, whether we are talking about the air, ground, or underwater. I mean, it's not something that we can tell, okay, this is important, the ground will be not important, or the underwater will be much less important. They are all important, but the only thing is that dynamics have changed. The warfare has changed. And I just want to tell you that the whole scenario is basically, we are talking about, then just I would like to put it into 5 categories: the speed, decision making, theater of war, troop movements, weapons, and intelligence. Now that's something which we need to take in consideration of these 5 factors. Aerospace is something, yes, definitely, it will change, it has changed the entire warfare. I would say that the warfare the definition has got changed. Take an example of this. I was interacting with the Israeli counterpart. I tell how much, you have played a very disaster role. What kind of these drones have been doing? He said, doctor, we don't have the time to teach the drones. The drone is just a bird sitting in a box. He flies, he understands, he engages, he neutralizes, come back and rest in peace. So I said, what is a human intervention? He said 15 seconds is a human intervention in that whole scenario when he goes for a combat operation. So just we tell it's a human or it's a physical object. That's my role, nothing more than that. So when we are talking about the Indian scenario, I just want to tell you one thing. We should not use government as a punching bag. We should not start blaming everything for, okay, government is not doing that or not. We are capable. The first thing is that we should be, my professor has taught me, you should have a valid golden principle when you are doing something. You should have a right technology. You should be in acumen to understand the right technology for the right place, in a right profession at the right cost, and at the right place. So, and something which, these are some of the things which are there. It's not that we buy all the technologies, we generate all those technologies and those technologies can play a wonderful role for us. It's not like that. Every technology has a sensitivity, it has a time frame. After that, you are, presume that you are standing in a galaxy and the technology is revolving around you. So you cannot put every technology there. That's the main problem which I have found, whether it is in the aerospace, whether it is in the tactical weapons, whether it is in electronic warfare. I have seen there is a big gap between the startups, or we call it as a strategic partner, and the defense forces. It's not on the fault, or there is no fault on the defense forces. The fault is there is unclarity. They are the strategic partners, or the people, the industry people, are not able to understand the problem statement in a right way.
May I request you to please tell us whether the air warfare and aerospace warfare and the future of war is undergoing a change, or we will continue to fight the same way as we did?
No, sir, I'm just telling you, this is the next generation, the scenario has changed. Automatically, I have told you that the things are going in a much bigger way. When we are talking about the aerospace security, yes, there is a massive change in the aerospace security. But only thing is that when we are talking about the technologies can only be helpful in getting me those objectives when I am able to understand that problem statement. In fact, technology is there. We have got the AI, we have got the quantum. There is an encryption layer.
Thank you. I got your point that you need to understand the technology, and the technology would actually fit into the strategy.
Absolutely,
Thank
sir.
you very much. No, I'm coming to IdeaForge. Ankit, in the previous session, we spoke about the drone warfare. And from the air campaigns to aerospace campaigns, and what precedes the warfare and shaping of battle, how do you think you will contribute to an aerial campaign? Or are you beyond the aerial campaign and you would be an adjunct to the aerial campaign and be more in close support, in support of the ground offensive? Because of your constraints of strategic reach? Or are you going to say the drones and the autonomous aerial systems will replace the way we fight the air campaign? Or are we going to be tactical about only ordering some 100 drones and expecting wonders out of it, and we not be able to integrate into the overall autonomous controls? Because after all, you're occupying the aerospace, you're occupying the spectrum, you are also going to be part of the ecosystem which is counter drone system. How do you see this entire ecosystem interposing itself between the air and the aerospace campaign to the ground campaign?
Thank you. Thanks a lot for the question, sir. I think from our perspective, my belief from the very beginning has been that there is room for every category of uncrewed and crewed technology insofar as warfare is concerned. Right from a soldier needing to observe a house right in front of them, which a fighter jet has no relevance of trying to target when the soldier is right there, to observing that same asset from 5 kilometers away, that same asset from 50 kilometers away, to observing it from maybe 5,000 kilometers away, which probably a satellite might be doing. So the requirement for intelligence is there at every stage. For example, a satellite is a great vector to I was speaking to Shreyash, to trigger an action that there is something there, we should investigate. But a satellite may not be sufficiently powerful to investigate precisely what is there. And therefore you may need another aerial asset. Now, whether that aerial asset can be a manned aircraft or an unmanned aircraft, depending on whether we are in the peacetime or in a different time, a different type of asset may be required, depending on how far you want to observe the target and what target we are trying to observe. So I think we will very clearly see advent of uncrewed technology across the entire spectrum, like right from 150 gram or a less than 250 gram drone, which is very critical right now for tactical operations, to a drone that can do probably 1,000 kilometers range. But unfortunately, something that can do 1,000 kilometer range may or may not be relevant for peacetime because you can't cross the border. The relevance there may be of the time it flies in the air and the distance it is able to observe in the other territory. In the wartime, again, many of these larger assets have proven to be very, very susceptible to air defense on the other side, and therefore they have largely, even in the current wars, been relegated to much deeper in their own territory rather than at the forward front of the enemy territory. And therefore, based on the situation, the defenses that the adversary has, we have to plan how to counter their offenses as well as how to create our own offenses. We may not get clear wins in any of the aspects tomorrow, but definitely our observation and our approach should be to counter what we are observing as capability build up on the other side, and we have to, one, counter it for sure, but also have our own assets, our own clear approach as how we will go and attack our adversary. And that may not be sufficient to say that larger assets are good enough. That has been proven in the real war that they are not good enough alone. So therefore we have to think of deploying at the soldier level, at the platoon level, company level, battalion level, all the way up to looking at what we will do for peacetime surveillance and persistent monitoring.
Ankit, what you're saying is that at the moment we are building an asset, but at the moment I think we need to have a very clear strategy and build a doctrine around the equipment that we're having. Unfortunately, at the moment in India, we do not have enough data points of history in which we have participated in aerial campaign of the nature that you are talking about. So therefore, unless we have our own history and our own data points, we will not be able to write doctrines, or we'll have to borrow doctrines from somewhere else and then try to apply them and hope that they will be successful in India. So I'll just leave it at that at the moment, and I'll go to General Pawan, Anand, who sits in USI and looks at the industry for the future, how ready the industry is to participate in the warfare that we are talking about. But here I would say that we all understand that we are going into the MDO, multi-domain operations. And industry, when you're talking about digital, electronics, talking about materials, all these are the mothers to make technology successful. So ultimately, all kind of industry will one way or the contribute to the success of a multi-domain operations. How does India prepare its industry to make sure that we sequence them well, even when you're building a defense corridor? Our defense corridor is a long stretch of land, a number of people sitting there, and are they building an ecosystem to fight a multi-domain operations? Or are we just giving them plots of land and electricity connections and some permits, and then say, okay, please apply for ABC, and then whatever he comes up with, we say, is it okay or not? Or are we giving them a direction that what we expect out of industry, how, when, in which sequence, and building an ecosystem? How are we making sure that the conceptual multi-domain operations are making our industry capable? And let me request you to start with the cyber warfare.
Yeah, you put a lot of spectrum to everything that you want me to say, and I'm sure I have very little time. So let me quickly get to 2 or 3 points which I have in mind. The first, and without doubt, and this came out in full measure both with Pankaj Saran as well as Raj Shukla, industry has to be partner. Industry has to be fully integrated today with our concept of war fighting, because they are the ones who are going to turn our thoughts, our thought out plan of action, so to say, into an implementable plan. So while you may have a fighter aircraft, which is a very high capability aircraft, and you can do joint production with, let's say, the Russians, or tomorrow with the Americans or whatever, you still need to have technology coming in form of avionics, in form of add-ons, in the form of new ideas which have to be implemented in the battlefield. So let us be clear, there has to be a partnership. I think that partnership today has, we've certainly said that we are changing from vendor to partnership, but I think it's still very semantic. We have Ashish Kansal sitting here today, Vikas, Geeta, Ankit. We are all discussing here. How many times have we actually sat down and tried to work out how we're going to fight our battle with their help tomorrow? At least in uniform. I don't think so. I think we're trying to tell them what we want. Have we ever discussed with them that we need to fight a battle with your ideas also? And maybe we'll teach you how we do it, and maybe you'll tell us how it can be done differently. So I think that's where the fundamental difference comes in. And that's where I say, if you want to look at something to be done, even if at one point looking at doctrine, it has to be thought out in partnership, and then finally you may come out with whatever you had in mind with minor tweaks in it. So it's a very major issue that I wanted to bring out here. So we have to have integrated teams, and I've spoken about it when I did my doctorate on it. I have given it to government 7-8 years ago. Something has come out. It came out in the DAP, but then it's got lost in those 780 odd pages in the DAP that you have to have integrated project teams. Do we really look at emerging technologies where we are in partnership? Absolutely. I mean, when you look at cyber warfare, most of our warriors have to be youngsters. Most of our warriors cannot be in the mold of a uniform. They have to think differently. They can't be templated soldiers like us. So if we have to bring them into cyber warfare, we have to bring in a bunch of nerds whom we can help think in our way and help us fight the way our rivals are fighting outside. Look at an operations center maybe in China. Something like 5,000 personnel dedicated to this job. I'm not sure how many we have. I don't even want to hazard a guess on the figures. But that's just volume. What about the quality? So there has to be a mix of uniform and nerd put together who are able to bring out a different form of cyber warfare. And to give you an example, when the Ukraine war was to begin, and that happened in 2022, it was in January that the Ukrainian critical information infrastructure was attacked through a series of cyber attacks. Now that was actually something like a recce which was being carried out by whoever their inimical element was. That was in mid-January. By mid-February, there was a major Reccean force which took place, which were major attacks on their critical information infrastructure. And finally, on 22nd, or was it 24th of February, when the actual attacks took place, one day prior to that, all critical information infrastructure was crippled. And that's why Starlink had to be brought in at one point. Now, this is the capabilities that we are talking about, which we will be facing in the future. And as General Kapoor just brought out, we have a superpower in our neighborhood. You don't even have to be in the neighborhood when you have to carry out cyber warfare. So we have to look at a very, very different way of warfighting. Today, warfighting is multi-domain. It is not going to be only at the tip of my bayonet. It is going to be at the press of my button. It is going to be by the ideas that we are utilizing with a bunch of people sitting there, not just in uniform. So I may be sounding a little maybe out of step with the military thought, but we have to bring things together very quickly. And I think it came out very sufficiently in the 2 fireside chats and the keynotes.
I think, General Pawan, Anand, you are not only saying that whether you're in step or not, but I think you are certainly in the right direction of where we should head to secure our nation. Say, if I was to suggest...
Thank you for reaffirming, because when you talk like this, you need reaffirmation on that.
If I may suggest that one day in the US side, General Naravne said that maybe we are already in a state of war. I think there he meant maybe number of cyber attacks which are happening, and a lot of networks could be getting compromised. Not in India, elsewhere. Networks do get compromised and information does go out. Many youngsters who are working in the cyber agency, they go and sit in some systems and they report the matter, and we have to take a decision exactly what to do with that. The person is sitting somewhere. Having said that, do you think that we will have a cyber campaign first, which is non-kinetic, non-contact? And you yourself said the networks will be down, the critical infrastructure will be down, there is no electricity, there is no water, the mines are gone, there's no connection, you don't know whether your children have reached school or going to come back because there's no connection. You lose connectivity, you lose your mind, you don't have water, you lose your power, physically you are incompetent, and then there is a chaos that sets into the mind that we are so used to information, and the information is either manipulated, the wrong information is coming to you, or the information is not coming to you at all. Don't you think that state of war in the future is going to be run through imaginations of the adversaries, and we have to be not very tight in our doctrines? It's like, don't make clothing which is so much stitched in precision that you make a policy which is as tight as a wonderfully fitting garment, and then the moment you start putting it and you find, no, I have to go for a refit. And every time, every 6 months you go for a refit. Or should we make policies which are like draping a sari? Irrespective of who's the person wearing it, sari can make it look nice and it fits in all sizes. So are we going to look at very tight, precise policy guidelines and doctrines, or are we going to make it loose because you do not know from which side, which way the adversary is going to come and destroy certain elements which you may not have even thought of protecting? Are we headed in that direction? Which means that we need to open more discourse and we need to open minds to newer ideas, and then say there will be some losses, but we need to have resilience and we need to have very quick capability to reinvent ourselves on the go. And I think Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Hamas, all of them are reinventing themselves on the go. And I don't think so we need to have a very nicely stitched suit all the time and then we run to the tailor for a refit all the time. So coming to General Kapoor, it is just that we are running short of time. How do you think that the military is thinking of integrating the industry into the multi-domain operations concept? The other day I was speaking somewhere and somebody asked me what is multi-domain operations, so I started counting. Army, Navy, Air Force, so land, air, sea. Then the fourth one was Homeland Security. The fifth one was industry. The sixth one was space. And the seventh one was cyber. Because cyber is the fifth domain, is the newest domain. Space is one before that. I think industry has been neglected as being a partner in the multi-domain operations. If the industry cannot make you capable to fight and participate in a war, in a standoff warfare where youngsters are actually working in their boardrooms and in their incubation centers and in the R&D centers, constantly monitoring what upgrades you want and give it to you, as somebody was saying metaphorically, by Mondays. Are we going to achieve that? And how is the military looking for this kind of a flexibility, for this kind of a preparedness?
Thank you, sir. Very important facet that you raised, sir. Firstly, I just want to reassure everybody in this house, there is a huge paradigm shift in thinking. Industry is a partner. And in March, that is just about a month back, we have something called the Army War College. The Higher Command course had a 1-week session with industry partners, with academia, all discussing and ideating on all this complete multi-domain operations. We understand we don't have everything on our table as yet. We are willing to pick up anything that is available today in the Indian industry. And just to bring the anguish a little on a lower orbit, anybody who's here from the industry who wants to come and do an army attachment to understand what we do is most welcome to come and do it. as long as you are an Indian passport holder. You're most welcome to come and do it. Please contact my office. We will ensure that you come and do a detachment. You understand what we want. And we have also recently sent our officers to the industry to do an attachment. So we are very, very happy to do that, and please, we'll be very happy to engage on that. And we are willing to ideate together. We're willing to ideate together as to how do we take these capacities further. The second thing is, there is a huge amount of relationship that has to be built. It is not always return on investment. We understand militaries are slow, militaries across the world are slow. You first build that relationship. And we are happy to build that relationship. If I was to just give you a little statistics, the way this whole concept of Atmanirbharta is being pushed forward, this year, the Indian Army, for the first time in its history, has inked contracts worth 85,000 crores. And 75% is to Indian industry. I don't think there can be a bigger reflection to that. Our defense attaches who are overseas, we understand because the scales may be less here. Our defense attaches have been specifically been told to promote Indian industry overseas so that defense exports also go up. And coming back to how do we create an engagement, every place that you feel that there is a need and there is a need for you to come and engage with us and you have that capacity. Because every time when we seek that capacity, there are sometimes time overruns and there are cost overruns. And therefore, we're okay with that, but come to us and we will take it forward together. We are even willing to, the whole IDEX process, we are all willing to even invest jointly in it together with you. And all these people, if you have to do a doctrinal reconstruct and if you have any ideas, we are willing to absorb those doctrinal aspects also. And finally, I want to reassure every industry partner here that there is, in the corridors of South Block, in the corridors of Sena Bhavan, there is a huge change in this whole paradigm thinking. And you can knock anybody's door here that, if there is, you will only find positivity in that. And this, the thing that the industry must realize also, that what General Raj Shukla also said, there has to be some spending on R&D. If we talk about the American industry having that partnership, 75% of the R&D comes from private industry. In our country, even 0.5 does not come from private R&D. Most of the burden of R&D is left to the government. So we are very happy and willing to partner.
General Kapoor, I think it was extremely encouraging. One has been wanting to hear this kind of very open, very certain statements from a serving military general. And you are at a place where I see your appointment as the deputy chief, responsible for transformation from analog to digital to autonomous. All is that you can do. And I think you have opened your doors, and actually not only opened your doors, you have actually stepped outside your door to meet the industry. I think it is really, really heartening. I must congratulate you for what you have done. Before I open the house for discussion, Ankit, I am very curious to ask you one question. There are, I don't know, hundreds of startups, maybe in thousands, I don't know. So let me just limit to that, who are into drone manufacturing. They're all struggling. What did you do right that you got a government contract? And none of them have been successful, or most of them have been successful and then thrown back off the wall. What did you do right? And what message do you have, not only to the drone industry, but to the industry at large, to be acceptable by the government?
Sir, I think motivation to be in an industry matters a lot. For example, it started off as a fun project 20 years back for us. And in 2008, when our country was under attack by terrorists, is when we decided that we want to make technology for our forces. And I think for us at IdeaForge, every time we build a technology, it is to be effective in a scenario like that. It is to make sure that technology that we build and deliver works in the real world. And I will just give a very small example, sir. Just yesterday we received news that they were able to use our technology and neutralize 3 militants, saving lives. And I think that is the core of what is very, very critical in my opinion. If we are not trying to build technology for if it is being treated like a business, we will not do everything necessary for our warfighter, and our warfighter has to win for us to be safe and secure. I'll give you another example of how this translates. Early in the time when drones started to come into the armed forces, the requirement every time stated was that we want hand-launch UAVs. Now, hand-launch UAVs was what the rest of the world was fielding across the world. And these drones were deployed in Afghanistan and many other areas, and they were being effective there to whatever extent possible. But in India, they bought a few of those. We only supplied a few. But they were not able to use them because our environment is not such that you can get clear airspaces to take off and land from, and it's very mountainous, very difficult to launch in valleys with tall trees, etc. Then when the government wanted more of such drones, they wrote in the specs that we want more hand-launched drones. But we knew for a fact that it cannot be that a hand-launched drone will operate in our environment. That's when we came up with, despite not being demanded by the forces, with the switch drone that takes off vertically, transitions into an aircraft, does the flight time necessary and comes back and land. I think that mindset is very, very critical, that we build irrespective of what limitation is there on the forces side to understand what they need, because they are trying to absorb it from where other examples in the world are. To which I will give a comment just after this, sir, but I think as an industry we need to build what is right as a solution, otherwise it won't see use. And if it is not seeing use, we will always blame the technology for being ineffective rather than the choices we make in inducting the technology being ineffective. I think that has made a huge difference insofar as absorption of technology is concerned. Today, we don't demand a single non-vertical takeoff and landing drone for at least surveillance applications insofar as our valley and those areas are concerned. So I think that is something which I believe is very crucial, and most of the Western technology in the global technology fails in our high altitudes. To be able to build something that operates at the heights of Siachen in -30, -40 degrees is not something that is very easy or very simple for the rest of the world as well. And that is the strength that as a country we need to leverage. We have the terrain, we have the challenge thrown at us, and we need to leverage to be usable in that environment. Our customers that have done over 600,000 missions on our drones, and many of those missions are happening in -30 at 5,000, 6,000 meter takeoff altitude. That I think is the reason why we build technology which is effective for our forces. And to that, sir, I wanted to add that it is very critical in my opinion that as a country we start thinking of winning ahead of making something which is in line. We so far have been focused on eye to eye with our adversary. We are not thinking of getting a superiority ahead or an edge ahead of our adversary. I think our mindset all the way up to the highest leadership has to evolve that no, India will and can gain superiority as compared to our adversary. We can be hyper creative if we have to, and I was extremely delighted when General Pawan said that industry has to have a seat on the table. We need to know as a country what is our industry capable of doing in the country, and we need to identify people who can dig really deep in technology, because surface level system integration is not going to cut the ice for our operations, for our ambition at least. If our ambition is to be better than our adversary, we need to find out people who can dig 3 layers deep in the technology and come up with something which is spectacular that will give us an edge ahead of others, and we need to induct it as fast as we can so that we can have superiority today and not 15 years later, by when they would already be a much larger distance ahead.
Thank you, Ankit, very well. I think the panel of this kind needs to talk to the audience, and I think we need to have sufficient time for that. So I would request the audience, in case you have questions for the specialists, I will be very happy to accommodate. Please. You've already asked a question in the first one. Is this same question or a different question you have? Oh, so you're going to give a pass, okay. Anybody else wants to ask a question? Yes, sir, Jan Khandare, sir, please.
Firstly, I came in between, so I'm not sure what I'm going to say, whether it is appropriate or not. But I have just three brief comments to make. General Kapoor, when you mentioned that anybody who's an Indian passport holder, I would request you to look at it differently. Indian diaspora is as patriotic, and if they are holding an OCI card, which has been verified by RNW and IB, would you rather encourage Sundar Pichai to come here and give you the latest technology? I feel you should look at it and bring in some policy changes about interaction. The government's intent is very clear. You can have a look at that. The second point is with General Pawan. Vendor industry partner is not semantics. It brings in an attitude among the people who prepare RFPs. So if you can take a little point from me, a vendor is looked like a unit banya. We need to change that. That is
That's the
one.
point I made. That's
So-
the point I made.
So I may not have got it. Old age is catching up. Ankit, when you talk about what you have given, delivered, most important, whatever you delivered, you still have to keep upgrading the cyber resilience. Because that's the biggest threat, especially for the private sector. I don't know what kind of cyber resilience you build up in your manufacturing as well as in what you deploy across. Because it has to be a continuous upgrade, and your job will not finish only with the purchase order. Thank you.
Absolutely, sir, and that's the integration, that's the military industrial complex we need to create, that our job should not end per force at the time of supply. It should continue till the life of the equipment, and we should have upgradability budgeted in. It's just that our processes have to account for that ability for the industry to support. I think those processes have to upgrade, but that's the beauty of also having indigenous technology, that we have the ability to fix even if it was not fixed earlier.
Yes, sir, please.
Thank you, sir. I'm Captain Anand from IDSA. 2 points which I want to ask, sir. One is the issue of responsibility, delays, which always impact services. So when I was talking to a French delegation, they said they have a responsibility principle in their design development projects. So any entity which is involved in, let's say, we have to get some product from them and they are developing something for us through IDEX or any other D&D initiative or make one. Any entity which introduces a clause which leads to delays is accountable, made accountable. Is there any thought, so it's to General Rakesh, we are looking at those points. The second point comes to how do you verify the indigenous content, not only by public sector but private sector both. That is indigenous. So far, the government came up with a policy on indigenous content based on components, software and materials. But that will not be possible unless Defence Forces and MOD set up a technical committee to define these things for each system or the critical systems. So is there any thought how to validate indigenous content of public and private? Thanks.
So coming back to both your points, firstly, I'll talk about the indigenous content and about the time and cost overruns. I would say by 30th of September this year, you would have a document which would clearly articulate both those issues. In this year of reforms, we'll have this by 30th of September, and hopefully by 1st October it will be articulated in the open meeting.
Can I just make a point? Just wanted to make a point, sir. I think accountability and responsibility can only happen when it comes down to a few individuals and not to the entire process. We have a very long process. We have layers in every headquarter. How are you going to fix accountability? So unless you put it onto a bunch of people for a particular project, I'm just talking about projects. I mean, you can translate it to any other thing. Unless you name out in a project, these are the people who are going to be responsible and accountable at the end of this. Whether it is the technical person on ground, whether it is the guy who's processing it in a headquarter, whether it is the industry guy who then has to pay a penalty for it, or whether it is the finance guy who may also be putting a lot of breaks into the entire system. Everywhere you have to fix one person responsible for it, who has to be then sitting there in the room when discussions happen and not make himself absent. So all this is an obfuscation which has come into the system, and I'm sure that when General Kapoor talks about it, a few of these points should have been addressed.
Yes.
All right, yeah, I'm Jan Sangha. You know, I retired in 2016, and some of the points that Mr. Ankit you made, I heard it then, 2016, that the industry must have a place at the table. Believe me, I used to have the same points. And I also am involved with an institution where I check the thesis and dissertation of people who are doing MPhil. For the last 10 years, the issues that they've been pointing out have been exactly the same and repetitive. It talks about bureaucracy as one of the things and so many other issues. So the impression that I get is, what really changes after all this? And I was in DGMF, which is an equipment intensive organization. At that time, we used to talk of FRCV and ICV. These kind of seminars used to take place. There's nobody from MOD here sitting. And I'm not so sure how this will be communicated to the industry, but the points that I've heard today is exactly what I heard 9 years ago before I retired. Bureaucracy, friction, and for things to happen, I've been actually reading part of every dissertation for the last 10 years. So unfortunately, there's nobody from MOD here to take note of what I'm saying. The second is the Army's got to look at yourself, you know. At the national level, the ambassador said that it was a national war. Today, unskilled labor is leaving India. The IIT techies are leaving India. The super rich are leaving India. Why are they leaving India? American has been made by Indians. Indians who are good. Unfortunately, it was one of the dean of one of the IITs who said only 5% of Indian IITians have actually world-class knowledge, and 50% of IIT engineers are unemployable. So the issues is actually way beyond. There was one Commodore Paul Raj of the Indian Navy. The Indian Navy could not make him an admiral. Between the DRDO and Indian Navy, he left out of disgust. He was approved for admiral, and today he is actually the recipient of the Marconi Medal, which is equivalent of a Nobel Peace Prize in sonar technology. So I'm just pointing out certain issues. You got the talent, but you got to put your basics in place so that what is available here. Otherwise, 9 years from now, you'll be making the same point, which will never get incorporated.
General Sagar, I want to make a comment here that we are sitting in Kalam and Kavach. I expect you organizers to use the Kalam to write to those people who are not here. And unless they do this, next time you will find that Kalam and Kavach will only be Kavach and no Kalam. So I think it is the day of the media that people who speak are heard by people who can translate that into people who have to act. And I think that is most important, and that is where the power of media lies. It is not people who are making points. I think it is people who are carrying those points is extremely important. I request the organizers to take what General Sanger has said right to where he said MOD is absent, so and so. Please make sure that they all are present through your column. General Reem, please. You had a question.
I've got just 2 points to make, and this came from the discussion. One was that money spent in R&D, and second, as you rightly brought out, is the upgrades. Now my question is, we have all been working from QR to QR. The government giving you the business and you developing the product. It's time for this nation and for the industry especially that you set in the QR. You have to now come in with technology that this is an Indian technology which is going to lead the world. We are only adopting the technology. and we have to change to technology leaders. If IdeaForge can give an upgrade, and IdeaForge today has to give a technology which is world class, which is first class, which is first time made in the country. And this goes for every industry which is in our ecosystem. Your take on it.
Ankit, don't you think it's a great idea, Sarji?
So I'll give you an example. 2013, we went around the entire Northern Command, spent 40 days doing real world activity, demonstrating an equipment that used to fly a small quadcopter, they used to fly for 40 minutes. What would you expect, sir? Like rightly said, the industry should lead, and 40 minutes was the benchmark in the world. Nobody was able to do even 30 at that time. Do you know what the tender came out for? 20 minutes. The challenge in our country is not the lack of availability of cutting edge technology from the industry. By the way, sir, I have spent last year as IdeaForge, which is a listed entity, 22% of my revenue last year were being spent on product development and research. So that investment is happening by our young companies, but our ability to absorb cutting edge technology is becoming a huge problem, sir. Every time I am actually seeing resolution of QRs rather than evolution of QRs based on the latest capability available by an Indian entity completely homegrown. Every iteration I am seeing devolution rather than evolution of QRs. That is the environment we need to urgently fix. And R&D, so that's our job. I've studied at IIT Bombay. I've stayed back in India despite having the offer to study abroad because I want to build technology for our country in our country. Setting that example कि इंडिया में रह के भी अच्छी वर्ल्ड बीटिंग टेक्नोलॉजी बनाई जा सकती है, बट इकोसिस्टम में सपोर्ट चाहिए. वी नीड सपोर्ट फ्रॉम द इकोसिस्टम. वी नीड MOD to understand that we are doing this by self-sacrifice as much as perhaps other people are doing by staying back, because it's not for the lack of opportunities that we are here. We are here because we chose to be here to do this for our nation and our country.
See, the other side also understands. In 2017, when you brought your drones for testing, I was on the other side where you were on the testing front. We understand that you are new and you are the only one in this field who is actually coming. So government or institutions provided you the full support. We even closed our eyes in certain parameters which were not meeting, but we knew that it's a homegrown technology. That way, institutions will come to your full support when you come out with good technologies.
Absolutely, sir.
I think we've had a great discussion. It is just that we are running short of time. To wrap up, I will request all our participants, starting with Dr. Ojha, to give one sentence of what you want to communicate to the audience and through the column to the government or the ones who got to be making policies and taking future decisions. One sentence from each one of you.
Positive, sir. Only one sentence that taken in inverted commas. Just want to tell you that after hearing all the discussion and me working very closely with the three forces and with the strategic people, I think there is a urgent need of integration of the forces.
Okay. So that's one statement, right?
And sir, just to add something on that, I need the skeleton on which you want to put Mother AI, Father Quantum, Crypto. That skeleton needs to be robust, only then these drones, HAVs and other things will be effectively working, and then you will have a kind of a good scenario where you can create a kind of a robotic soldier or Terminator, whatever you want to do.
So I'm glad you are actually indirectly or directly indicating mosaic warfare. And I think we'll talk about it. I think we need to have a larger debate on that.
No, I think, sir, this is, I think, very, very crucial time for our country. I think moving away from just seeking parity with our adversary to seeking superiority, I think we need to start doing that, and we need to do it together, all of us together on the same table.
Okay. Thank you, General Pawan.
So, sir, having been on both sides, my wish is that I see more of the senior hierarchy of the military sitting outside their office with industry, and leave the rest of the taking forward on file to the juniors and not the other way around.
Thank you very much. Request General Kapoor, who I said actually has stepped out of his office to meet the industry. The final comment from the Deputy Chief, General Rakesh.
Sir, I'll make a very specific comment, sir. The one defining technology that is going to influence our lives is artificial intelligence, and we are seeing it happen. I think it's time this Team India made this into a strategic project involving private, public, government, academia, military together. And if data sharing has to be done, so be it.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, may I request you to give a hand to our participants. Very frankly, and I think in short time, gotten those points which we very need immediate implementation and attention. Thank you very much to our panelists. I think we've had a great discussion.